Good afternoon, everyone. This is Helen Mack. Thank you so much for joining us. We are getting ready to turn the presentation over to the South Carolina Treasurer's Office for more information regarding the benefits that they offer to state employees.
Hello, everyone. I hope you can hear me. My name is Karen Kreider, and I want to thank you for joining me today to learn about the Palmetto Able Savings Program and how these important accounts can help individuals with disabilities save for their future. My name is Karen Kreider. I'm the program manager, and I'm also the mother of the young man who is standing second to the left and not smiling. And that's my son, Matthew, and he has a Palmetto Able account, and I manage it for him. So today, we're going to cover a lot of information that should provide you with a good overview of the program, including eligibility, benefits, how to make contributions, and how to spend the funds, and much more. Before we get started, I need to just cover this slide very briefly because these are financial accounts. We do recommend that everyone read the disclosure statement and the participation agreement, which can be found online on our website. So now that I've told you that, we can get started. First, what exactly is the Federal ABLE Act? The Federal Achieving a Better Life Experience Act was actually started by a group of parents in North Virginia. They were with the North Virginia affiliate of the National Down Syndrome Society, who were frustrated by their inability to save for the future of their children who were born with Down syndrome. They could save money for their other children for college. They could save money for themselves for their retirement, but they could not save money for their children who were going to need their help the most. It took 10 years, but finally the Federal ABLE Act was signed into law in 2014, and in doing so, created tax advantage savings and investment accounts for individuals with disabilities. And what is so important about these accounts is that they allow individuals who are living with a disability and the families who care for them to save money without impacting benefits or eligibility for benefits such as SSI and Medicaid. Now, the other part of the Federal ABLE Act is that it allows states to bring qualified ABLE programs to their citizens. The Palmetto ABLE Savings Program is South Carolina's qualified program and was established in response to the federal legislation. Our program is administered by State Treasurer Curtis Loftus, and he is shown here speaking on the State House steps during a Disability Advocacy Day. Our program opened for enrollment in 2017, and we have almost 2,400 accounts open statewide. Now, the other part of the Act is that it allows states to partner together. In South Carolina, we participate in the Ohio State Treasurer's Ohio Stable Account Program. They have 13 partner states in the Stable program, and they are one of the largest and most used programs in the country. And they've been very good partners to South Carolina. So what exactly is a Palmetto ABLE account? These accounts really are a bit of a hybrid of several financial accounts. They have features of a 529 college savings program, like Future Scholar, in that they are tax advantaged, meaning interest grows tax-free, which we'll talk more about later. And they have features similar to a checking account in that you can use the money transactionally to pay for qualified disability expenses now, or actually to save money for your future. And finally, they have some similarities to a special needs trust in that they benefit individuals with disabilities. Now let's look at who is eligible for a Palmetto ABLE account. First, let me tell you, we do have an eligibility quiz on our website at palmettoable.com. If you visit that, you will know in a matter of just a few minutes whether or not you or someone you love may be eligible to open an account. Now, to qualify, you must be an individual living with a disability that occurred prior to the age 26, which we'll talk a little bit more about. You don't have to be diagnosed, but the symptoms must be present prior to the age 26. And to participate in the South Carolina program, you must be a South Carolina resident, plus you must receive one of the following. Either be eligible to receive SSI or SSDI due to the disability, or have a condition that's listed on the Social Security Administration's list of compassionate allowances conditions, or you can self-certify, which we will talk about on the next slide. To self-certify, what an individual needs is a diagnosis of a physical or mental impairment that causes marked and severe functional limitations. And this is the Social Security Administration's definition of a disability. You will also attest that the condition has lasted or is expected to last for at least 1 year. You do not have to have a written diagnosis to send in to us, but you need to have one on hand. So we actually have a form on our website, a physician form, that a doctor can take that and indicate the date of onset of the disability, provide the diagnosis code, and just attest as well that they are a doctor eligible to practice in the state of South Carolina. We don't ask you to send your private health information into us, but just keep it on hand in case you ever are asked for it by one of the benefits agencies. I wanted to show you some examples of people who may be eligible for Palmetto ABLE accounts because these accounts really can benefit a very wide range of people. And we'll start with Andy, who's on the left. Now, Andy was born with Down syndrome. He's in his 30s today. He receives Medicaid and SSI. Do you think Andy would be eligible? Well, the answer to that, of course, is yes, because he was born with Down syndrome. The next person we have is William. Now, William is an Army veteran, and he is on a disability discharge from the military, and he was injured when he was 25 years old. So do you think he would be eligible for a Palmetto ABLE account? The answer for William is yes, because he received his disability prior to the age of 26. Now, the next person we see is Tom, and Tom unfortunately had a terrible motorcycle accident just a few days after he turned 26, and he is now a person with paraplegia. Do you think Tom would be eligible? The answer for Tom is no, because even if his disability had occurred one day after his 26th birthday, it was past the age of onset for ABLE accounts. Now, the last individual we have here is Mary. Mary began showing symptoms of a mental health disorder when she was a teenager, and she was diagnosed with this disorder when she was in her 30s, and today is about 50 years old and receives both Medicaid and SSI. Do you think Mary would be eligible for a Palmetto ABLE account? And the answer to this is yes, because her symptoms were present prior to the age of 26. Now, these are examples we've made up just to kind of show the range of people that are eligible, but through the course of the past few years, working with disability organizations around the state, I've met individuals that fit every one of these criteria. So it is very broad reaching. Now let's talk about the benefits of these accounts. First, Palmetto ABLE accounts are owned by the individual who is living with the disability. So there really is pride of ownership. Individuals with disabilities are often an unbanked population, and many of these folks have not been able to have financial accounts like the rest of us. And now with Palmetto ABLE, the account is owned by the individual living with a disability, which is a first for many people, including many adults. Palmetto ABLE accounts also protect resources because individuals can now save money without affecting their eligibility for benefits programs while saving well over $2,000. And Palmetto ABLE accounts can help eliminate spend down. If an individual receives benefits, they are often in a position where they have to go out and spend their money making purchases for things they don't want or need just to keep their resource level below the $2,000 limit. Now they can save money, much more money than that, but they can have it and save it for things they need on a short-term or long-term basis. And these accounts are tax advantaged. And what this means is that the earnings on Palmetto ABLE accounts are not taxed on a federal or state level so long as the funds are used on qualified disability expenses. And in South Carolina, you can deduct the contributions you make to a Palmetto ABLE savings account from your South Carolina state income tax return. And you know, there are intangible benefits as well. And I've heard this time and time again from families who say that having a Palmetto ABLE account for their loved one or child gives them peace of mind, which is sometimes something you cannot put a price on. Now let's look at the enrollment process, which is very simple and can be done online on our website, which is palmettoable.com. There is no cost to open an account. The process is quick, it's easy, and it should not take more than 20 minutes to do this. And the opening deposit is $25 to initially fund the account. And this money belongs to the account beneficiary. And after the initial deposit, contributions can be as little as $1 each. And also you have to note that eligible individuals are only allowed to have one ABLE account, regardless of the program they participate in. Now, in terms of opening or enrolling in an account, it can be done by either the individual living with the disability, who is the account holder or the beneficiary, or by an authorized legal representative. And an ALR can be a parent, a guardian, or a conservator for the individual, or someone who has power of attorney for that person. And we actually have a power of attorney form on our website that is specific to Palmetto ABLE. And let me mention too that the final ABLE regulations were published by the IRS in October of 2020. And in doing so, they expanded the types of people that can open and manage these accounts to include a spouse, a sibling, a grandparent, or a rep payee. So we will see more flexibility with that going forward. The enrollment process is pretty much the same as you would go through in setting up another financial account for online banking. To get started, you create a username and password for the account. Then you'll be asked to provide information on the beneficiary, their name, their social security number, address. You'll be asked for information regarding their disability as well and their diagnosis. And again, all that information is held very, very closely and very privately. And we will ask the same information from the ALR in terms of name, address, social security, and this is all for verification purposes, and it's required by the banking industry. And let me mention here that there are no tax consequences for an ALR. So if you manage an account for someone else, it does not have any bearing on your personal income tax returns. You'll also have an opportunity to tell us how you want us to communicate with you about the program, whether you want online statements or prefer paper, and you'll have a chance to review the registration. And then once you verify your email address, you're pretty much good to go with your account. This is what our website looks like, and it's palmettoable.com. On the left side of the page, you can see the button that says Open an Account, and then in the top navigation bar, we also have Open an Account and Log In. You can click either of those Open an Accounts, and it will take you to the landing page to start your account. And then in the future, you would hit the Login button to go into your account. These are the landing pages that it will take you to. The page on the left, Open a Palmetto ABLE account, is what you will first see to set up your account. And here you'll notice Stable Account, which is correct. You're in the right place. The Ohio Stable Program, as I mentioned, manages our program. So the back end of our program is all specific to Stable Account, but it is the right place to be. Then once your account is set up, going forward, when you log in, you'll come to a login page, which is the same as what we see on the right. Now, there are a number of ways you can fund a Palmetto ABLE account. First, you can do electronic funds transfer, and you can set it up to move money from a checking or a savings account into the Palmetto ABLE account. You can also mail in a paper check made payable to Stable Account and just include the account number and the beneficiary's name in the memo line. And the mailing address is a P.O. Box in Rhode Island, which is available on our website. You can set up your account to make recurring contributions through a payroll deduction. And we have more information on the next slide about that. And you can also do an account rollover from a 529 college savings account or another ABLE account. And why this is important, especially when you think about rolling over a college savings account, is that sometimes life happens and you may have a future scholar account, for example, set up for your child, and then one day you realize that college may be uncertain. You can then take the funds and roll them into a Palmetto ABLE account up to the annual contribution limit and use those funds for other related disability expenses, but you can also use it for college as well and for education expenses, which we'll talk about. And there are no fees associated with doing a rollover from either a 529 plan or another ABLE program. Now, payroll deductions are really simple to do, and if you are an individual with a disability and employed, you can set this up for yourself. Or if you're the parent of a child or have a family member you want to make regular contributions to, you can set it up through your payroll department as well. What you do is we have a payroll deduction guide and form on the website. Just download that and follow the instructions that will involve taking some completed paperwork to your HR department, and then you can be set up. So it's an easy process. It's a good way to get in the habit of making regular contributions to your Palmetto ABLE account. Now, we also have a gifting page, which allows anyone to give directly to a Palmetto ABLE account. And why this is important is that if an individual receives benefits and family members or anyone gives them financial gifts, those may be counted as income or against their resource limit. However, if you give them a gift directly into the Palmetto ABLE account, it's protected. It does not count against that resource limit. And this can be done online once the account is set up. You log into the account and you'll see an adding a gifting page option, and then you just follow the directions there. And once the page is created, you'll receive a direct link so you can post it on social media or send to friends and family, and then you will be notified every time someone makes a contribution to the account. Now let's look at how much money can be put into a Palmetto ABLE account on an annual basis. The annual contribution limit is $15,000 per year, and this is from all sources combined if the beneficiary is unemployed. Now this number is tied to the federal gift tax exclusion, and so in the future, if the federal gift tax exclusion goes up, this number will increase as well. And note that this will include contributions from all sources, whether they're made by the account holder themselves or family member, trust funds, friends, whomever. It all counts towards the $15,000 cap. Now, if someone is employed, they may be able to contribute up to an additional $12,760 into their account. And that's so long as they don't participate in an employer-sponsored retirement program. The lifetime maximum contribution limit is $501,000, and we may see this number, and likely will see this increase in the future. Now, I'm frequently asked, well, what happens when you hit the maximum number? Your account will still continue to grow and earn interest, but you won't be able to make any more contributions until the account balance goes below the $501,000. And contributions are counted on a calendar year, which is important to remember. So if you contribute $15,000 to your account by July and then turn around in September and take out $10,000, you cannot put more money in your account until the following January 1st. And the system is set up to reject excess contributions, which makes it easy to keep up with. Now, there are some things to keep in mind, especially as it relates to supplemental security income, or SSI. If an account holder receives SSI and has over $100,000 in their Palmetto ABLE account, the amount over $100,000 is considered a resource. So if you have, say, $101,000 in your Palmetto ABLE account and have another $1,500 in another financial account, those two amounts together would be over $2,000, and then your SSI benefits would be suspended. You do not have to reapply. You do not lose your eligibility. Then once the account balance drops below $100,000, your benefits resume. And it's important to note that even if your SSI is suspended, your Medicaid benefits remain in place. They are never affected by the balance in Palmetto ABLE account. Now, people often ask, why is it $100,000? And this is just the way the law was written. But you have to remember, prior to the federal act being passed, if you had $2,000 in resources, you lost your benefits. So up to $100,000 is a $98,000 increase, and that really is a game changer for many, many people. Now, another exception is for housing funds, and that is when funds are withdrawn for housing expenses, such as paying a mortgage or rent, they must be paid in the same month in which the money is withdrawn. Otherwise, those funds may be counted as a resource for purposes of eligibility for benefits. And finally, if an account holder contributes money into their account, their wages are still considered income, even if they go into a Palmetto Able account. These accounts are intended to be asset shields, but they are not income shields. Now, there are some fees associated with Palmetto Able accounts, as there are with most financial accounts. And we have among the lowest fees in the country, which was something that was very important to Treasurer Loftus and the senior leadership team at the Treasurer's office. We have a monthly maintenance fee of $3.25, which means $9.75 is deducted on a quarterly basis, and that comes to $39 a year. And we also have a small asset-based management fee that ranges between 0.19% and 0.33%. And this is just deducted from the earnings on an annual basis. Now, Palmetto Able accounts are investment accounts. And when you make contributions, the funds are invested in different portfolios of your choosing. You determine how you want to invest your money, and you can change your investment strategy up to twice a year, which is called rebalancing. It's very similar to how you would function with a 401k account. In terms of our options, we have 5 choices from the bank safe option, which is an FDIC insured option, which is not going to earn a lot of interest, but it will be federally protected up to $250,000. And we have 4 Vanguard Life Strategy mutual funds, which are a mixture of stocks and bonds. And while we cannot give investment advice, I really encourage everyone, if they have questions, to either speak to a financial planner, or if you have a friend or someone who's very financially savvy, talk to them about what may be the best options for you. And also, when you're opening your account, you will be asked to select your investment options. But if you don't know at that moment how you want to do this, you can select the default option, which is the FDIC insured account, and your money will go there until you log back in and make your account your distribution selections. Now, these accounts were designed with the intent of spending the funds on qualified disability expenses. And these are really anything that's going to relate to the disability and help maintain or improve the health, the independence, and the quality of life of the individual with the disability. There is no one list, and people frequently ask if we have a list of things you can spend it on, but it was intentionally written very broadly by the IRS to allow people to spend the funds in a way that benefits them the most. For example, what is important for my son may not be important for someone else. But we do have some broad buckets you can look at, and to give you some ideas of how they can be used. You can use the funds for housing and rent, and this would include homeowners insurance, house repairs, utilities, basic living expenses, including food and clothing, or even entertainment. You can use it for transportation, whether to rent a car or use a service such as Uber or Lyft, or if you have to have a vehicle modified to accommodate a wheelchair. Those are all qualified expenses. You can use the funds for education, whether for tutoring, for college, for tuition, for books. Anything related to education is a qualified expense, even job training. Assistive technology is a huge category, and this would cover everything from adaptive keyboards to service animals. And that would include the care and the cost of veterinary bills and food for a service animal. It covers health and wellness, of course, for medical expenses, therapy, pharmaceuticals, anything like that. Financial management, if someone wants advice on how they should invest their money in their Palmetto Able account, you can deduct the fees that you would pay to a financial planner from the account, and that's a qualified expense. And you can also use it to cover legal fees. So if an individual had long-term plans to open a special needs trust, you could go ahead and save money in the Palmetto Able account and then later use those funds to set up a special needs trust that will benefit the individual with the disability. Now, there are things that are considered non-qualified expenses, and of course, those would be things that don't improve your health, your well-being, or independence of the account owner. Some of the best examples I can give you of that would include things like gambling or alcohol, or giving gifts to other people, because that does not benefit the individual with the disability. And what's important about this is that if you spend money on non-qualified expenses, the amount of the expenditure may now be considered a countable resource in terms of eligibility for means-tested benefits. And it's not worth that risk. Just spend the money. We tell people to use their judgment, to spend it wisely. The other thing is you would pay tax penalties on the distribution. So if you took money out of your account, you would pay 10% penalty on the earnings portion only of the distribution, and then a 10% penalty. So if someone took out $1,000 from their Palmetto Able account, $900 of that was money they themselves had put into their account, and $100 was interest earned. If they spent that on a non-qualified expense, they would owe taxes on that $100 and a 10% penalty. Now that's not significant. Really the bigger issue here is you don't want to do anything to jeopardize your benefits eligibility. Now let's take a look at withdrawing money from your account. And the good news is withdrawals from these accounts are free and they are unlimited. To do this, you simply go online and you will, under the account management portal, click request a withdrawal. You can do it one of two ways. You can use an electronic fund transfer, and then you can have funds transferred into a personal bank account, a checking account or savings account, then access the money that way. Or you can load funds onto your stable Visa card, which we'll talk about in just a minute. And the other thing you can do is request a check, and you do this online. So an account holder or an ALR can request a check cut to themselves or to a third party for paying bills or other expenses. So it's really pretty simple to access the money. Now we do have the stable Visa card, which is a loadable prepaid debit card, and that can be used anywhere Visa is accepted. Now there are some advantages to using the debit card, and an ALR can request one for their beneficiary. Like I have a card made out in my name for the benefit of my son, which makes it easy to spend money and keep track of those expenses. But these cards do have some protections built in, which is important because a lot of times individuals with disabilities may be more financially vulnerable because they have not had a lot of exposure to these types of accounts. So one way this works is that the accounts are loadable. They do not pull funds directly from the account for the card. You have to physically go online and transfer money from the account onto the stable card. There are protections as well, as you won't have any overdraft fees, because if money is not loaded on the account and you go to make a purchase, if there's not enough money, the purchase will not go through. And you don't have any cash access to the funds, meaning you cannot go to an ATM machine and pull out money using your stable card. And you can limit merchants as well. The account portal for Stable Card does give you a great place to notate your spending records and make notes of what the funds were used for. So if you ever need that, you've got a record right there. And you can set these cards up to provide you with alerts to monitor your spending and also let you know when your account, your card has reached a low balance. Now, this is a question we are frequently asked about, and that is special needs trust. People will say, well, if I have a special needs trust, do I need a Palmetto Able account? Or, well, I've already got a Palmetto Able account, why would I need a special needs trust? The reason for that is that there are things a trust can do that you cannot do with an Able account. For example, trust can make distributions to a Palmetto Able account, and they can also accept unlimited cash and non-cash assets, which is something that you cannot do with a Palmetto Able account. It has to be cash, and you are restricted by the annual contribution limits. So for Palmetto Able, you do have advantages as well. You've got broader spending power, meaning you can use the funds on housing and food. You get state tax deductions for Palmetto Able, and you don't pay federal or state taxes for the earnings. And these accounts are really easy to establish and administer. And again, they're owned by the individual with the disability. So our perspective is, and our feeling is, that these accounts are really complementary tools that work together to benefit the individual with the disability. Medicaid services. This is something we're always asked about as well. Medicaid, if someone receives Medicaid benefits, when they pass away, Medicaid can ask for payback, but there are protections built in with this. First off, there are limitations. Medicaid payback is only from the date the account was open and Medicaid benefits were received. So for example, if an individual received Medicaid for 30 years, had their Palmetto ABLE account for 3 years, and then passed away, only that 3-year period would be subject to payback. Also, there are some deductions if you paid any kind of Medicaid buy-in premiums that were paid during the time the account was open. Those can be added together and subtracted from the balance of the account before it goes through payback. You can also use the funds to pay any outstanding bills for the individual with a disability, which is important because there may be medical bills, who knows what, but you can use the funds to cover that. And you can also pay for funeral expenses, funeral and burial expenses for the beneficiary. And, if you have a special needs trust for an individual, if they don't have a prepaid burial package, once they pass away, you cannot use the money in a trust to pay for that, but you can use funds in a Palmetto ABLE account. Now, there is a process we have established that you go through upon the death of a beneficiary. And what would happen is the ALR would notify the program administrator, and then you can use the funds to pay for outstanding expenses, as we just discussed. And after all of those expenses are paid, the ALR notifies the program administrator, and at that point, the account is frozen essentially, and no further withdrawals can be made. Now, if the account is subject to Medicaid lien or payback, the program administrator works directly with the South Carolina DHHS for that process. And after that's complete, any remaining assets will pass to the account holder's estate. And if the account holder did not have a will, then the account assets will go through the South Carolina probate process. And remember, we are here to help. Our customer service number is 1-800-439-1653, and it's open Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. Eastern Time. We have a lot of information on our website, and you can email us at team@stableaccount.com. But I would really encourage you to just pick up the phone and call. That's going to be the easiest and most simple way to get your questions answered. And we ask that you please help us spread the message. You can find posts about Palmetto ABLE on Facebook, on the Office of State Treasurer Curtis Loftus's page, and we're on Instagram as well at SC State Treasurer. And this is a quote I like to end presentations on because I think it so perfectly sums up the benefits of these accounts. And this is from one of our account holders up in Lawrence County. And he said, "A Palmetto ABLE savings account levels the playing field, not only for me, but for so many others. It allows us to plan and save for the future without penalizing the benefit programs we need to assist us." So I hope this information has been of help to you, and that you will visit our website. And if you need a Palmetto ABLE account, please be sure to check them out. Thank you so much. Okay, and Ryan, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay, perfect. So just give me a second or two, and hopefully my slides will load up here. Okay, great. So hopefully you can see on the screen slide that says education planning and funding. If somebody wants to just put something in the chat real quick to confirm that. So similarly to Karen, my name is Ryan White. I work for Columbia Threadneedle Investments, and we are a partner with the South Carolina Treasurer's Office to administer the Future Scholar 529 College Savings Program. So just a quick introduction to Future Scholar. It is First of all, South Carolina's only 529 college investment program. Of course, every state in the country offers some form of 529, if not multiple forms. But Future Scholar is the only one for South Carolina, which is important, and you'll understand why in just a couple of minutes. Similar to the ABLE program, it is administered by the Treasurer's Office. Treasurer Curtis Loftus and his staff oversee the program. Columbia Threadneedle, as I mentioned, is program manager and investment manager. And we've actually had a relationship with this program going all the way back to its inception in 2002. It is over 200,000 accounts and about 5.6 billion in total assets as of the end of June invested in the program. So we're very proud of it, and it continues to grow very nicely. So we're going to talk quickly today about just the importance of education planning, certainly the rising cost of education that we've probably all noticed over the past decade or so. We'll talk a little bit about sources of funding, financial aid, and then we'll spend a few more minutes talking about 529 plans and specifically the Future Scholar program, since it offers some very unique benefits to residents and taxpayers in South Carolina. I like to point out that is my son. He is a little older than that now, but his birthday is actually tomorrow. He's going to turn 3. So I like to say that similarly to Karen with the ABLE program, I'm not only an advocate but a participant as well. So I like people to know that. And of course, there's a lot of reasons to talk about education planning. If you're like me, your child is going to have a birthday, or your grandchild is going to have a birthday this year. This means, of course, they're getting 1 year closer to college. It's hard for me to believe that my son's going to be 3. It seems like time's going in warp speed. And of course, higher education is already pretty expensive. In most cases, it's a top 3 financial expense when put next to things like saving for the cost of a home or the cost of saving for retirement over time. And of course, you can borrow the money, but that's going to result in more cost overall as you pay that money back with interest. And it's also important to note that most children or most students will pursue some form of higher education. So even though you may have read stories how enrollment might have dropped in recent years, it still is true that about 2/3 of students that graduate high school every May are enrolled in some form of higher education in the immediately following fall semester. So your chances are better than not, right, that the student that you're saving for will pursue some type of higher education. And of course, education continues to be a leading indicator of economic success. It still is the case today that those with a college degree will earn more on average, about twice as much on average actually, as those who do not have that level of education. But college is expensive, as I mentioned. So these are sort of national averages. But you can see here the cost of a public 4-year in-state on-campus experience is a little north of $25,000, probably closer to around $27,000. And that's certainly the case if you look at South Carolina public schools, for example, like Clemson or South Carolina or College of Charleston, all of which, or as much, if not more, than sort of that national public 4-year in-state average. Obviously, if you go out of state to a public school or to a private school, that cost can get significantly higher. And of course, note here that a lot of the costs associated with attendance, especially at a traditional 4-year school, is not simply tuition and fees, but everything else, right? Room and board obviously takes up a big portion of that, but transportation and other expenses as well. Of course, this begs the question, what about financial aid? And of course, financial aid is a complicated system, and not to make it overly simplistic, but there are really only 2 types of financial aid, right? There's the merit-based aid that everybody wants. This is the money that is usually given to us freely, either to entice a student to come to a certain school to play a sport, or it's given for academic achievement in high school. If you think about the Palmetto Fellows or the Palmetto Life program, for example. But ultimately, these are awarded as scholarships or grants, generally money that doesn't have to be paid back. Needs-based aid, on the other hand, is formulaic. It uses a questionnaire called the FAFSA form to gather asset and income information from parents and students. That information ultimately yields what's known as the expected family contribution, basically a magic number that is to indicate what your family is able to pay for the cost of education. And quite simply, the cost of the institution minus that expected family contribution represents the financial need. And it is these financial aid packages that are developed based on that information to fill that gap. What's important to note here is that most of this is not free money. It comes in the form of work study or more often student loans that of course have to be paid back, which increases the overall cost. Now, what we see is when we look at how people are actually paying for education, we see that while financial aid, represented in gray and red, so the scholarships and loans and grants all lumped together, does make up about 50% of all funding. The other 50% is still coming from, parent income and savings, right? So there still is, a large burden being carried by parents and grandparents, in addition to a large amount of financial aid in the system. And also note that about 1/2 of all financial aid represented by the gray portion, almost 1/2 is representative of basically student borrowing. And of course, we've all heard and seen headlines about student loan debt and whatnot. But again, it's important to understand sort of the expectations going in, that while there is a lot of money in the system, there still is a large portion of funding that is coming directly from parents' income and savings. So how are people planning to pay for the cost? Well, what this shows you is that 529 plans, in my opinion, are still largely underutilized by many people who are self-identifying as saving and investing for the cost of education. You can see here a little less than 30% of people that have this explicit goal of planning for education are using a 529 plan. Many are still using general savings accounts, checking accounts, maybe other taxable type investment accounts. But those that use 529 plans generally save more on average because they're more tax efficient. And they have potentially greater opportunity for investment return, certainly than your general savings account that you might get from the bank down the street. So knowing that, why don't more people use 529 plans? And it's probably due to one or a combination of many of these factors. Some people, quite honestly, are scared that since a child or student has to be named on the account, this means that they're giving up control. Others might be worried about restricted use to in-state schools or financial aid impact. But generally speaking, it's just because we don't understand the many unique benefits that we get from using these types of accounts. So that's what we want to talk about for the next couple of minutes. Why and how is a 529 plan a great option to help me financially prepare for that education savings goal? Well, if you look at what a 529 offers you, you're getting a lot sort of right out of the box when you decide to participate in 529 plans. 529 programs, just like many other programs, the ABLE program similarly that you just heard about, are very beneficial specifically because they offer unique tax advantages. And of course, taxation is one of our greatest impediments to wealth accumulation over time. So if we can avoid taxation in any way, it usually puts us in a better position. So the 529 is offering tax-deferred growth of contributions, so I don't get an annual tax bill for the gains in my account, and that happens at both the federal and state level. It also offers tax-free distributions, again, similar to ABLE for qualified expenses. And a state income tax deduction for each dollar contributed is available for South Carolina taxpayers. And again, that's only if you're contributing to the Future Scholar program. So if you happen to have maybe opened up a 529 in another plan, you may want to consider moving that into Future Scholar, which you can do. We'll touch on that a little bit later. But only the Future Scholar program is going to make that deduction eligible if you're a South Carolina taxpayer. 529s also offer a significant amount of flexibility and control, and this flexibility and control is the account owner's flexibility and control. The ability to use it on a wide variety of expenses, which now includes K through 12 expenses as well as apprenticeship programs. And note that these accounts are also quite beneficial for what they don't have, specifically no age limit, time limit, or income limits apply to 529 accounts. So you can't earn out of the ability to participate in a 529. You don't have any required minimum distributions. and no time limit on accounts, making these accounts very flexible for use. And some lesser known benefits are actually those that fall into the gifting and estate planning category. We won't spend a lot of time here, but just note that 529s are actually given very generous contribution limits when compared to other type of tax advantaged accounts. And they also have the ability to name a successor owner, which allows for the easy transition of the account, again, outside of the probate process, which is quite beneficial. So not to discount the benefit of, again, tax-deferred compounding returns, let's look at a very quick example. So if we had $25,000 that was invested over 10 years and we achieved a 7% annual rate of return, that account would grow to approximately $50,000 tax-deferred over 10 years. That means you have $25,000 of growth in the account that can be spent completely tax-free for qualified higher education expenses. And it's more than almost $7,000 of additional return made available through tax deferral. So again, this idea that not only am I compounding my investment, but I'm compounding my investment in a tax-free or tax-deferred way. Well, where can I use all this money in a tax-free manner? Well, when we're talking about higher education, I can use it in-state or out-of-state, public or private, 2-year or 4-year. It also includes community colleges, vocational schools, over 400 international institutions, and postgraduate institutions as well. So an exhaustive list almost of colleges and universities throughout the globe. When we talk about the types of expenses, it can certainly be used for tuition and fees, but it can also be used for all the other areas of the chart that we looked at a few minutes ago, which includes books, supplies and equipment, room and board, even off-campus housing, up to the cost of living in a dorm, computers, software, access to the internet, all of which, as long as it's primarily used by the student, can be used, again, as a qualified distribution from the 529. And certain expenses associated for special needs if required for attendance. And you can start to see, again, some of the overlap here with the ABLE program, and I'll try to point those out as we go along. As I mentioned, 529s, which used to be exclusively college funding vehicles, have been enhanced in recent years to include a couple of other options as well, specifically apprenticeship programs that are registered with the Department of Labor and associated costs with those, and K through 12 tuition expense. Again, so this is kindergarten through 12th grade at public, private, or religious schools. Again, this is just limited to tuition only. And last but certainly not least, student loan repayment up to a $10,000 lifetime limit per individual. So again, 529s, which still often carry the name of college savings plan, have really been transformed over the last few years to be more of just a pure education investment opportunity. So let's take a look quickly at how the 529 is registered, because again, one of the fears is that we think, folks are nervous about giving up control of their dollars. They don't have a crystal ball. They don't know what's going to happen. They're 3-year-old like I have now. They have every intention of them, attending college, but certainly don't know if that will be the case. So the 529 is registered in such a way where there's 2 names that are required to go on it. The first is that of the account owner, and it is the account owner that, in fact, owns the account, controls the account and the assets, and they have the option but no obligation to use for qualified higher education expenses. The beneficiary, or the future college student maybe, in this case, is really a placeholder. It's the person for whom I can make a qualified distribution, but different from the ABLE account. In the 529, the beneficiary never has any rights, does not own the account, and never assumes control. So this gives the control 100% to the account owner, which really sort of guarantees that you can ultimately use the funds for the purpose that you think is the most valuable. A successor owner can also be named. This is the person that would inherit the 529 if something happened to the owner. It is optional, but is always recommended. So let's look, of course, at what happens then if the money is not used for education. Well, the first option you have as the account owner is to change the beneficiary. And the IRS says that you can change the beneficiary to anyone who is a member of the family of the current beneficiary, and you can do this as often as is needed. So this certainly includes siblings, but it also includes any lineal descendants, so you as the parent or grandparent. And it also includes first cousins, blended families, so step siblings as well, and aunts and uncles, a very, I would say, wide umbrella of eligible beneficiaries. And this, again, can be done as often as is needed. The second option you have is to simply do nothing, right? You can wait. You're earning tax-free growth of your investment as long as it stays in the account with no time limit or age limit. So just as easily as that student may have decided maybe not to go immediately to school, doesn't mean they may not change their mind again to go back. So you don't have to take any distribution from your 529 account that's not 100% when you want to take it. Last but certainly not least, of course, is to take a non-qualified distribution. So in this particular case, this is anything not associated with the cost of education. And similar to what Karen described with the ABLE program, this would be subject to tax at your ordinary rate and a 10% penalty, but only on the earnings. So again, the contributions that you make are not taxed or penalized. This is reported annually on a 1099-Q. So when you take money out of your account, you get a 1099-Q that shows you how much of your distribution was your contribution basis and how much was earnings. And again, only the earnings would be taxable to the distribution recipient, whether that be the account owner or the beneficiary. And if a penalty does apply, 10% again assessed on the earnings. But note here that there are some penalty waivers, and I would like to highlight scholarship as a penalty waiver because certainly you are not going to be penalized through the 529 plan for having a student that earns a scholarship. So really quickly, if we take our same example from earlier, you can see that on the left-hand side, if we did a distribution of our entire account, which is half contributions and half earnings, the first $25,000 of our 50 comes back completely tax-free. It's just a return of the contributions that we made. Only the $25,000 earnings portion would be subject to tax. In this case, we assume a 24% rate, an additional 10% penalty, which does apply to the earnings. But you can see over $41,000 is still available for use even after taxes in this non-qualified use scenario. And of course, if we look at the right-hand side, let's assume we made the distribution payable to the beneficiary. Maybe we're helping them with a down payment on the house that they want to buy. And maybe we're doing so because they got a scholarship. So in this case, we make the distribution payable to them. They're perhaps in a lower tax bracket due to their income. They don't pay the 10% penalty due to the scholarship, and you can see the situation is even better off. So all this is to point out, of course, that fear of a non-qualified use of funds is certainly not a reason to not participate in 529 college investment programs. So how much can you fund into a 529? Well, as I mentioned, 529s have very generous contribution limits, and that's because the contributions to the program actually qualify as completed gifts to the beneficiary for gift and estate tax purposes. This can get a bit technical, but what that means in dollars is that each year, each contributor to a 529 plan can put in $15,000 to as many beneficiaries as they want. And of course, if you're married and file a joint return, you each have that amount for a total of 30. So $30,000 annual limit for a married couple filing jointly. And again, that's on a per beneficiary basis. But you can also accelerate this up to 5 times that annual amount by using what's known as a forward gifting or accelerated gifting feature that's exclusive to 529 plans. So certainly very high contribution limits relative to other types of tax advantaged accounts, and maybe worth a conversation with your financial planner or accountant if you want to go over and above that annual amount. And we have plenty of information on the website to help you navigate that situation as well. And of course, these high contribution limits make these accounts not only great for education and helping young families save over time for education, but can also make them very attractive for folks that might be in a legacy planning phase where they're worried about maintaining control of their assets today, but perhaps positioning them for the next generation as well. Now, I want to circle back really quickly to financial aid, because one of the reasons that people say they don't participate in 529s is because they don't want it to look like they have very many resources available because they won't qualify for financial aid that they might otherwise get. And the short answer of that is it's not very true. The financial aid calculation is much more heavily weighted towards the amount of income you have and doesn't look at assets nearly as heavily. In fact, a 529 plan that's owned by a parent, or even if it's owned by a student, is considered an asset of the parent for financial aid purposes. So even though you got a tax deduction for contributing, the account has grown tax-free, and you get tax-free distributions of the account if all used for education. When it comes to actually its application towards financial aid, only 5.6%, or as much as 5.6%, is considered eligible for college use. So again, fear of the financial aid impact is certainly, again, not a reason to avoid use of a 529 plan. Now, how can you participate? Well, there's two ways for you to participate in the Future Scholar program. One is very similar to that of ABLE. You can enroll in our direct-to-consumer program by going simply to futurescholar.com. This account is, of course, direct-to-consumer, meaning that you will not receive any type of investment advice. You will choose your own investments, of which there is much information on our website. But note, there is no annual account fee for this program, no minimum contribution, no minimum balance. Again, it was very important to the Treasurer's Office to be able to offer a low-cost program to the state of South Carolina, and that's exactly what the Future Scholar Direct Plan offers. If you have a financial professional and prefer to work with them, you can participate in our advisor plan. It's all the same features and benefits that we've talked about, but it will list your financial advisor as the rep of record on the account. Allow them to, of course, help you in choosing your investment options. And just note that depending on the firm may have some funding requirements if you do pursue use of the program in that way. Both programs offer similar ways to invest the dollars once your account is open. By far and away, the most popular is the age-based. These are age-appropriate investments that have been pre-selected based on the age of your child. They're more aggressive when the beneficiary or the student is younger. They get more conservative as the student ages and gets closer to that expected matriculation into college around age 18. There are target allocations as well, everything from aggressive growth all the way down to conservative and even what we call a college or like enrollment portfolio that's sort of designed for immediate use. And then lastly, we have a menu of single fund options. So this would be if you just wanted to be invested in, say, U.S. large cap stocks, for example, you can choose like a large cap index fund for your investment. And you can have any combination of those that you desire. I would like to point out here as well that there is a FDIC insured bank account, what we call the bank deposit portfolio inside the plan, which would be made available through that single fund option. If you absolutely want no risk whatsoever, we do have an option for that. Making contributions is easy. You can make electronic contributions from your bank account and even set those up to be recurring. Of course, all contributions are after tax. We also have eGift, a way to solicit contributions from friends and family online. We still take checks and, of course, rollovers from other 529 plans. So as I mentioned earlier, if you have a program that's not Future Scholar, you may want to consider rolling that into Future Scholar to take advantage of that tax deduction, which is only available for use of that plan. Taking money out, very similar, very easy as well. You can make direct payments online to the college or university of your choice. You can also direct us to make a direct payment to a K-12 private school. We just have to get that initial request in writing. What you most likely find easier is to take it out quite simply the same way you put it in, which is to withdraw funds directly to your checking or savings account and then pay the expenses directly. So a couple of more resources here, and then I'll see if we have any questions. Again, futurescholar.com is the website for the direct plan. You can go there for any and all information. We do have a service center as well, located at the number here from Monday through Friday, 8 to 8. And of course, if you choose to participate with a financial advisor, you can visit your financial advisor as well. So with that, I'm going to see if we have possibly any questions, or if we have anyone that wants to take a couple of minutes talking about unclaimed property. I don't see any questions popping up. I do see there are a couple people typing, so I'll wait and see. Okay, so we have a question about can you change your investment option at any time? And yes, for Future Scholar, you can change your investment option at any time. You are limited, however, to 2 times per year in the amount of changes that you can make, and that is an IRS limitation that governs all 529 plans. So basically 2 times per calendar year you can change your existing investments. New contributions can be made into a new investment at any time. Still a couple more bubbles popping up for typing. I'll wait and see if there are any more. All right, well, I believe we've probably come up on time. So on behalf of myself and for Karen Kreider with the ABLE program, we really appreciate you all giving us a few minutes to listen in. And Helen, unless you have any closing remarks, I guess we can probably adjourn.
Well, Ryan, thank you so very much for that presentation. We really appreciate you taking your time to do this for us. So thank you so very much. Everyone, have a great day.